In Canada, the top diplomats of 16 countries, including South Korea, the US and Japan, are gathering to talk North Korea. The two-day meeting in Vancouver, set to kick off on Monday local time, brings together ministers of nations concerned about North Korea's weapons programs, as they will discuss mostly security issues surrounding the Korean Peninsula. There's also the possibility that South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa will meet with her US counterpart Rex Tillerson and Taro Kono of Japan for bilateral or trilateral talks, as the Vancouver talks come just after the two Koreas formally met for the first time in over 2 years last week over next month's Winter Olympics in South Korea. Kang will leave for Canada shortly, and the Foreign Ministry is confident the meeting will boost international coordination and spread the consensus for a peaceful and diplomatic resolution of North Korea's nuclear issue.
Well, that was a state thing, but we're going to now get involved with them. I love that they took responsibility. They took total responsibility, but we're going to get involved. Their attitude and what they want to do, I think it's terrific. They took responsibility. They made a mistake.
What will you do to make sure something like that happens again? What will you do to make sure something like that?
Well, we hope it won't happen again, but part of it is that people are on edge, but maybe eventually we'll solve the problem so they won't have to be so on edge.
Have you communicated with Kim Jong-un? Can you clear up your comments?
Well, we'll see what happens. They have a couple of meetings scheduled, a couple of additional meetings scheduled. We're going to see what happens. Hopefully it's all going to work out. We will see.
Have you talked directly to him, Mr. President?
Well, the Wall Street Journal, as you know, quoted totally wrong. But we're going to see what happens with North Korea. We have great talks going on. The Olympics you know about. A lot of things can happen.
North Korea has hit out at President Moon Jae-in after he credited US President Donald Trump for his role in opening up inter-Korean talks, even making the veiled threat of pulling out of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. In protest, North Korea's state-run media said President Moon's rash remarks pour cold water over the reconciliatory phase and are dumbfounding. It added that the North Korean delegation for the Winter Olympics is still in Pyongyang. It also said North Korea will proactively make efforts to improve North-South relations, but will not overlook any, quote, foul behavior from North Korea.
They are meeting again today. They're discussing some more of the details of North Korea sending a delegation to the Olympics next month in South Korea for the Olympic Games there. North and South Korea are also at it again, at least verbally. North Korea is now criticizing South Korea and its President Moon Jae-in for complimenting President Trump and his aggressive stance for bringing the two countries together to discuss the Olympics. This is also moving beyond those efforts here in Vancouver. Because you now have these discussions here, despite the fact that the United States is trying to isolate North Korea, trying to get them to change their behavior. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will be coming to the Security Summit here in Vancouver. The effort is to try to tighten enforcement of United Nations sanctions against North Korea to make sure that they can't circumvent that. There'll also be a discussion here of a potential naval blockade against North Korea. Sandra.
And already, Rich, criticism of the Security Summit there?
Mostly because of the guest list. The United States and Canada decided to invite a number of countries that were involved in the United Nations effort, allied with the U.S. from 1950 to 1953 in the Korean War. That does not include China and Russia. China accounts for 90% of North Koreans' trade. They've been integral to this effort to try to isolate North Korea. Russia is also critical of this entire effort. Now, the United States says that it coordinated with China and Russia and will continue to do so on this. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says not so. A quote from him is, quote, "It is outright lies. We clearly said that we consider these efforts and this meeting to be destructive." The full summit gathers here in Vancouver tomorrow.
Let's talk about North Korea, another headache that you shared for quite a long time. You know, the president has said he's been pretty harsh about all the previous administrations, and he, to some degree, doesn't he have a point? Many efforts have been made. None of them have stopped the forward momentum.
He absolutely has a point. But I would just say, as I used to say, you know, people have asked me, what was it like to be in there? I said, well, you get up in the morning, you read the Washington Post. It says, the United States of America should do something about the North Korean nuclear program. And you say, why didn't I think of that, right? Yes, he has a point that nobody was able to stop it. But I think the administration is finding out just how hard it is to stop it.
What did you think when you woke up a week ago, or a little more than a week ago now, and saw the president's tweet about his nuclear button being larger than Kim's nuclear button? Was that a wise thing to do?
I've been no fan of the tweets, the policy by tweets. I've been no fan of that. But I also think it didn't deserve, you know, square column inches of analysis.
Nuclear war, though, is a pretty serious deal.
And nuclear war is a very serious deal. But I think people would be mistaken to think that because the president has an ill-advised tweet, we're about to have nuclear war with the North Koreans.
Do you have any concerns about misinterpretations or provocations?
I think Kim Jong-un is turning out, much more so than I thought, to be actually pretty clever. The approach to the South Koreans was clever. The decision to go to the Olympics is clever. I think he is more isolated than his father was, perhaps certainly more reckless. I wonder sometimes if he really believes it when he says, I can destroy the United States, because anybody who tells him something he doesn't want to hear seems to get killed. So maybe,
which is a real disincentive.
Which is a real disincentive to tell him the truth. And by the way, we tried the six-party framework.
Yes.
With China in the chair, Japan, Russia, the United States, South Korea, and North Korea. I think it's one reason that you want to make this multilateral diplomacy, what's just happened. What the North Koreans love to do is to drive wedges between the various parties. And perhaps
which they're maybe trying
to do now. And so you have to be very careful that you don't get into bilateral negotiations with the Chinese or bilateral negotiations with the Japanese or with the North Koreans without really fully integrating the South Koreans, who of course have the most at stake.
You use the word diplomacy. The president hasn't, and you're very close to the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. You were the one who, or one of the ones who referred him to the president. He was over in China in the fall, and he was working very hard to try and get some sort of negotiations going, and the president tweeted, I told Rex Tillerson, our wonderful Secretary of State, that he's wasting his time trying to negotiate with little rocket man. Put yourself in his shoes. You're there with the Chinese, and the President of the United States publicly rebukes you for doing what you were sent there to do.
Look, I can't imagine that happening, all right? Again, I can't imagine it happening with the president that I served. I'm quite sure it wouldn't have happened. I think what Rex Tillerson is doing is just working the diplomacy, just keeping his head down, going to work every day and working the diplomacy. And I think he's making some progress with the North Koreans. Now, it may be that when the president says you're wasting your time negotiating, he's probably right about that. I don't think negotiating with the North Koreans right now is going to get us very far.
Could there be a good cop, bad cop? I mean, do you think that there's actually an intent here, the whole crazy man theory that the president's trying to send this message that he actually could press that big button on his desk and that they ought to know that and make it facilitate Tillerson? I'm trying to be generous in my interpretation.
I do think in his own way what the president is trying to do is to say to the North Koreans, you have no idea how seriously I take this. And by the way, that is not a bad thing. And I think it has gotten the attention of the Chinese as well.
Is there a viable military strategy that would not lead to catastrophic loss of human life?
Well, there's always a military strategy.
What's the last clause I'm concerned about?
I really am not inside. It's been 10 years since I had any access to how we might think about what the North Koreans are capable of doing with their artillery. I suspect that you're looking at a really catastrophic circumstance if you actually do have war on the peninsula. But the military is right to look at the options, because the idea of a North Korean regime with a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the United States of America is one that I don't think any president of the United States can tolerate.
What they want to do, I think it's terrific. They took responsibility. They made a mistake.
What will you do to make sure something like that happen again?
Say it?
What will you do to make sure something like that?
Well, we hope it won't happen again, but part of it is that people are on edge, but maybe eventually we'll solve the problem, so they won't have to be so on edge.
Have you communicated
Japan for bilateral or trilateral talks as the Vancouver talks come just after the two Koreas formally met for the first time in over 2 years last week over next month's Winter Olympics in South Korea. Kang will leave for Canada shortly, and the Foreign Ministry is confident the meeting will boost international coordination and spread the consensus. In Canada, the top diplomats of 16 countries, including South Korea, the US and Japan, are gathering to talk North Korea. The two-day meeting in Vancouver, set to kick off on Monday local time, brings together ministers of nations concerned about North Korea's weapons programs, as they will discuss mostly security issues surrounding the Korean peninsula. There's also the possibility that South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa will meet with her US counterpart Rex Tillerson and Taro Kono of Japan for a peaceful and diplomatic resolution of North Korea's nuclear issue.
Well, that was a state thing, but we're going to now get involved with them. I love that they took responsibility. They took total responsibility, but we're going to get involved.